Greetings, this is TimeRider. Happy Saturday. If one were to assert that the Ford Mustang was the birth of the muscle car, then the Corvette and the Thunderbird were certainly its parents. Back then they called them sports cars, but each was a fairly fast two-seater with styling that was not for every man. Ford, read Robert McNamara, were concerned that a two-seater would have sales issues, and in 1958, they added a back seat. This model is a representation of that newer styled second generation, which was an instant success. Ford had created a new market segment, the personal luxury car. I'm going to restore this one, so stick around. The casting was held together with two rolled over posts, very common in Matchbox. It came apart pretty easily. It has a blue base and a plastic windscreen held in by a split post. Matchbox began producing this casting in 1959, so this is probably a representation of 1958. I'm grinding off the burr on the front posts. I want it to go together easily, and it was so close to the front of the car that I had to get my file out to get it to where I was happy with it. These were always kind of an off-white cream with a peach-colored base. And my 11/16" drill bit with the thunder stick to drill out the Thunderbird. The base on these cars was blue until 1962, when they started painting them black. That in 63 they started painting them black, and they did that until the end of production in 1964, but they continued to sell the casting until 1965. Need to tap these holes out. The 1958 Thunderbird, which was one of the top selling years, featured a 300 horsepower, 352 cubic inch engine. A little button screw action here. They were still making that engine into the late 60s, and a lot of my friends had those. Boy, that's some nasty looking stripper, isn't it? Still going to do the job. In 1960, Ford introduced an optional 430 cubic inch, and I'm guessing that those equipped were pretty quick. Now this car, this casting had a tip of one of the fins was broken off, so I was going to have to kind of restructure that. And I'm doing it like everybody else does things like that with super glue and baking soda. And then I need to do some casting prep so that I can paint it. Incidentally, I painted this car like 5 times, just so you know. One story says that a Ford executive came up with the name for the car after joining the upscale Thunderbird Country Club in Palm Springs. And we'll throw a coat of, I'm using Tammy on this, the first time I did anyway. Hey, here's another fun fact. Due to a strike, the 1957 two-seat classic Thunderbird was actually made almost into 1958, and the 4-seat redesign Bird came out later than normal for a car of that vintage. So let me tell you some of the things I learned doing this car. One, I learned how to make that peach. It's red and white and a little bit of yellow. First time I did it, I tried painting the white first, and then I taped it off and painted the peach, and then invariably that wound up this way. Now, I know there are those who will say, well, you didn't properly prep your surface and this and that and the other thing, but let me tell you something. I do surface prep all the time, and I'm not even saying there might not have been a flaw there, but this thing is really tiny. So anyway, you're back to square one, and this time I thought, well, I'll paint the peach first. And I've used modeling clay before. There's like a ridge where that curve is, and I thought, well, I can just fill that in with clay. And then I'll paint the white, which is what I did. And then when I got done and went to take the clay off, it worked fine, except that in the area where there wasn't a ridge in the side of the casting, in other words, the straight area that goes to the back, it left like a ridge of paint to contend with. And I was trying to fix it, and I eventually just gave it up and stripped it again. And invariably what I wound up doing was painting the off-white and then painting the peach by hand. And one time I actually got to this point too, where I was doing the detail work, and I had it sitting on my desk. All I had to do was put the base on it. And I dropped something on it. Took a big chunk of paint out of the roof. So those old paint demons were lined up against me. And you get to start all over. And you get to do things all over again. It is frustrating when it happens so close to the end, and I've had that happen a few times, but that's just the way it is. Things happen. I did finally get it done and put the thing back together. This one had the blue base. So there you go. The Matchbox number 75A Ford Thunderbird. Finally. I suppose I should probably mention too that one of the reasons that this project took so long is I actually made 2 of them. And I wound up having to paint the other one a couple times too. If you don't recognize it, Corgi came out with a Thunderbird, and this is what theirs looked like. So, considering how small these things are, I guess this is kind of a Corgi Junior. And it had a dent in the roof, and I fixed it. It turned out pretty good. Ain't too bad. See, look how small these are. That's a quarter. I'm happy, though. My little fin on the back turned out really good, and I really do like the Corgi version, and they'll look really good on the shelf. Stick around for an episode of The Bench. This is TimeRider, and I'll leave the light on for you. Hey, thanks for sticking around for this episode of The Bench. Well, let me start off with this 8E. I'm still working, it's this body line right here. I'm trying to make a continuation at the bottom of that door before I work further on this. And then I usually don't schlep products, but I found this on the internet. It was something that was pushed at me. If you look at this, the top to this bus, there's a broken post there. And so I bought this stuff. It's called Bondic. And it's a glue, and you can use it for a lot of things besides this. But the beauty of it that was really attractive to me. Oh, and by the way, it's pretty expensive, the kit is. But the beauty of it is that it hardens immediately using UV light. 4 seconds, they say, is all it takes to set it up. So I make myself a little post for this. Give it a few seconds of the light. And boom, it's hard enough that I can touch it and it won't impact it, and I can shape it. And what I've used it for so far is this is the base for my number 14 easel grifo, and I'm filling in the hole where the trailer hitch went, because who would put a trailer hitch on that, right? And then here's that truck that I told you probably weren't going to see again until September. And it's a part of kind of a long-term project that I've been working on. And oh goodness, yeah, I'm gonna cut the truck in half. So stick around and see where I go with that. So here's the interior of my easel grifo. My hope was with this particular casting, I wanted to elevate the game a little bit, and I don't mind showing you this because I know that once I get it inside the 1/64th casting, you probably won't be able to see the detail of it until you have it in your hands. So this last thing is another one of those Ferraris. I know I've done a couple of these already. I got one that was in really bad shape though, and this is a project that I've actually kind of wanted to do for a while. I'm not going to tell you what it is until I put it out. But anyway, that's it. This is TimeRider. Everybody have a nice weekend, and hope to see you next time.